9. The Pure Land, a vision of hope and compassion. In the Pure Land tradition of Mahayana Buddhism, there's a promise, one made from the depths of limitless compassion. Amitabha Buddha, once a bodhisattva, vowed that, "If any being calls my name with sincere faith, even once, they will be reborn in my Pure Land, a realm of peace, clarity, and awakening." To the logical, modern mind, this might sound mythical, like spiritual wishful thinking. But let's pause and ask, what if it's not about geography, but psychology? Not a place beyond the clouds, but a state beyond confusion? Whether you believe in it literally or take it as a metaphor, the Pure Land is real because hope is real. And when practiced from the heart, it can be a profound source of inner healing. The Pure Land as an inner refuge. Life is hard. There are days when the mind is too noisy, the grief too heavy, the despair too deep. In those moments, the idea of having somewhere or someone to lean on is powerful. Calling out Namo Amitabha Buddha isn't a magical spell. It's a lifeline. A whisper in the dark that says, "I'm not alone. I'm held by compassion greater than my fear." And that alone can shift everything. Modern application, a bridge back to peace. Let's say you're in the middle of heartbreak. Or you've lost someone you love. Or your anxiety feels unbearable. Your mind is spiraling. Your heart is clenched. And you don't know what to do. In that moment, trying to figure it out often makes things worse. But softly, gently, you say, "Namo Amitabha Buddha." Not because you fully understand it. Not because you're enlightened. But because you need something to anchor you. A thread to pull you back from the edge. And slowly, as you breathe with the phrase, something shifts. You don't disappear. The pain doesn't vanish. But a stillness opens, just enough for you to breathe again. Just enough to remember. I'm not this storm. I'm the sky holding it. Orange Heart, my personal reflection. There was a time in my life when I was drowning in grief. I couldn't meditate. I couldn't think positively. Every tool I had felt useless. Then someone told me, "You don't have to be strong right now. Just call the name of compassion." So I tried. Softly. Brokenly. Namo Amitabha Buddha. I didn't expect anything. But something subtle happened. I felt accompanied. Not fixed, but no longer alone in the dark. It was like touching a warm hand in the cold. That phrase became a bridge from chaos to calm. From grasping to trust. Final thought. The Pure Land isn't just a distant paradise. It's a state of mind, a movement of the heart. Every time you call on compassion, whether it's Amitabha or another name that resonates with your soul, you're remembering that there is goodness deeper than your pain and light stronger than your confusion. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to understand it all. You only have to remember this. You are not alone. You are not beyond healing. And within you, there's a place already pure, already whole, waiting for you to come home. X, the fires within, greed, hatred, and delusion. The world is on fire, with greed, with hatred, with delusion. And we fan the flames every day. The Buddha. We often imagine suffering as something coming from outside, other people, situations, injustice, or bad luck. But the Buddha pointed inward and said, "Look here. The fire starts within." He named them clearly. Greed, lobha, the endless wanting, grasping, and hunger for more. Hatred, dosa, the inner aversion, anger, and rejection of anything unpleasant. Delusion, moha, the fog of misunderstanding, ignorance, and self-deception. These are the three poisons, and they don't just hurt us spiritually. They corrode our relationships, our health, and our peace of mind. Test tube real-world reflections. Think of the corporate executive who keeps chasing more promotions, more status, more validation. On the outside, he's winning. But on the inside? Stress. Insomnia. Isolation. That's greed, not a sin, but a suffering. Or the angry voice on social media, raging at strangers. Everyone is a threat. Every opinion is a war. That's hatred, burning bridges, and boiling the heart. Or the kind-hearted person who keeps getting hurt, again and again, by people they trust blindly. That's delusion, not weakness, but an unexamined pattern, rooted in a misunderstood sense of love. We've all been there. Because these aren't rare, dramatic events. They are the daily flickers of fire in our minds. Every moment we crave what we don't have, resist what we do, or refuse to see what's really there. Fire extinguisher, the Buddha's antidote. But the Buddha didn't just name the poison. He gave us the medicine. Diamond with it. Generosity cools the fire of greed. Even a kind word can open a frozen heart. Diamond with it. Compassion quenches the fire of hatred. When we understand suffering, we stop adding to it. Diamond with it. Wisdom dissolves delusion. Seeing clearly, through mindfulness and reflection, is liberation itself. This isn't just philosophy. It's a practice. A daily tending of the mind, like watering a garden, like cooling a flame. Story: The Wildfire Within. There's a story of a humble monk who, every day without fail, carried buckets of water from the river to the monastery garden. One day, a traveler asked, "Why do you do this so religiously, even when no one's watching?" The monk smiled and said, "Because my mind is like a forest fire. If I don't bring this water of mindfulness each day, it will burn everything I love." That's it, isn't it? We don't tame the fires through force or shame. We tend to them gently, daily, mindfully. Just like we brush our teeth to care for our body, we meditate, reflect, and practice kindness to care for our mind. My reflection. There have been times in my life where I let the fire take over. When stress turned into control. When fear disguised itself as ambition. When resentment simmered quietly beneath the surface of smiles. I used to judge myself for it. But Buddhism taught me, don't condemn the fire. Learn to carry water. Now, when I feel that familiar heat rising through jealousy, impatience, or blame, I don't fight it. I pause. I breathe. I ask, what am I feeding right now? And what could I feed instead? It's not always easy, but it's always possible. And even the smallest act of generosity, of compassion, of insight can cool the flames. Final thought. We all carry fire, but we also carry water. And the difference between a wildfire and a warm hearth is how we choose to tend it. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, angry, greedy, or lost, don't panic. Just carry water. Breathe deeply. Act kindly. See clearly. And remember, every moment you choose love over fear, presence over reaction, understanding over illusion, you are healing the fire from within. 11. The nature of human beings, not good or evil, but complex. One of the most liberating truths the Buddha ever taught was this. People are not simply good or bad. They are shaped by causes and conditions. He didn't divide the world into saints and sinners, winners and losers, enlightened and lost. He looked deeper. He saw that every human being is a bundle of habits, experiences, karma, and conditioning. And that inside each of us are many seeds. Some wholesome, some harmful, and some neutral. Just waiting to be watered. The 4 kinds of people. The Buddha once described 4 kinds of people. 1. Those who harm themselves through toxic habits, negative self-talk, or self-destructive choices. 2. Those who harm others through anger, manipulation, greed, or ignorance. 3. Those who harm both themselves and others, trapped in cycles of pain and projection. 4. Those who harm neither, the wise ones who bring peace within and around them. But here's the powerful truth. All 4 live within us. You're not always just one type. You're not fixed in place. Some days, we act with wisdom and kindness. Other days, we fall back into old habits, say the wrong thing, act out of fear or hurt. That doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. And it also means you can change. Example, letters in stone, sand, and water. The Buddha gave another powerful metaphor about how we respond to anger. Some people are like letters carved in stone. They hold on to grudges for years, maybe decades. Others are like letters written in sand. They get angry, but it fades quickly. And a rare few are like letters written in water. Anger never really forms. It dissolves before it can take shape. Now ask yourself gently, which one am I? Maybe yesterday you were stone. Today you're sand. And maybe tomorrow, with practice, presence, and compassion, you'll begin to move like water. My reflection. This teaching humbled me. I used to label myself and others harshly. I'm just too reactive. They're so toxic. I'll never change. But when I understood that human nature is fluid, not fixed, something softened. I realized I've been all four kinds of people. I've harmed myself through doubt and fear. I've hurt others unintentionally. And I've also known moments of clarity where I chose peace over pride, where I didn't add more suffering to the world. And that gives me hope. Because every time I choose awareness over impulse, compassion over judgment, stillness over reaction, I shift closer to being the one who harms neither. Not because I'm perfect, but because I'm practicing. Final thought. You are not one label, not one mistake, not one moment of weakness. You are a dynamic, evolving being, capable of deep harm, yes, but also of deep healing, love, and awakening. So the next time you catch yourself judging yourself or someone else, pause and remember. We are not carved in stone. With each breath, we get to choose. Will I write in stone, in sand, or in water? 12. Death, karma, and the great equalizer. Of all the footprints, the elephant's is the deepest. Of all contemplations, the contemplation of death is the most profound. The Buddha. In the West, death is often hidden behind hospital curtains, euphemisms, and distraction. But in Buddhism, death isn't taboo. It's a teacher. A mirror that shows us what truly matters. Because the truth is, death is the one thing we all share. It doesn't care about your title, your wealth, your youth, or your plans. It comes, quietly or suddenly, and takes everything except one thing. Your karma. Your actions. Your intentions. The way you lived. Death isn't the end, it's a continuation. To the Buddha, death wasn't game over. It was a transition, a continuation in the stream of consciousness shaped by karma. This doesn't mean we ignore grief. It means we look deeper. What am I leaving behind? What habits am I reinforcing? What legacy of mind and heart am I planting for future moments, this life or another? Story, the mustard seed. There's a powerful story told in the Buddhist tradition. A woman named Kisagarami lost her only child. Grief consumed her. She carried the child's body through the village, begging someone, anyone, to bring him back. When she reached the Buddha, he said, "Bring me a mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." She searched all day, knocked on every door. But in every home, she heard the same answer. "Yes, we've known death." That night, exhausted and heartbroken, she sat in silence and finally saw the truth. Death is not just her pain. It's part of being human. And in accepting that, she stepped onto the path of wisdom. My reflection. There was a time I feared death deeply, not just for myself, but for those I loved. I avoided the thought like it might summon tragedy. But the more I practice, the more I realize. To contemplate death is not to become sad, it's to become awake. I no longer want to waste time proving, pleasing, or pretending. I don't want to hold grudges or wait until later to tell someone I love them. I want to live with purpose now, because now is all I'm promised. And strangely, the more I accept death, the more vividly I feel alive. A sunset becomes sacred. A hug lasts longer. A breath feels like a gift. Why death liberates us? We often cling to what doesn't matter. Status, image, old wounds, future fantasies. But death strips all of that away. And in doing so, it frees us. When we contemplate death, not morbidly, but honestly, we begin to see what's real, what's kind, what's lasting. We stop chasing. We start showing up. We live with clarity, with humility, and with love. Final thought. Death is not the enemy. Forgetfulness is. Wasting this precious life on distractions, fear, and division, that is the real tragedy. So let death be your reminder. Let it whisper. You are alive. You are breathing. You still have time to love, to forgive, to awaken, and to plant the seeds of a beautiful karma today. Life is uncertain. Death is certain. But what you do with this breath, that's where freedom begins. 13. From delusion to liberation, seeing through the illusion. The world is like a dream, a bubble, a shadow, a dewdrop, a flash of lightning. View it thus. The Buddha didn't say the world is fake. He said our perception of it is distorted. Like waking from a dream, enlightenment is not about escaping life. It's about seeing clearly. We live under three great illusions. 1. We think things are permanent. But everything changes: our bodies, relationships, thoughts, emotions, even beliefs. Clinging to permanence is like trying to hold water in our hands. 2. We think there is a solid, unchanging self. But what we call me is a bundle of conditions, constantly shifting. There is no fixed core, just a flow of body, feeling, perception, thought, and consciousness. 3. We think happiness lies in getting what we want. But the more we grasp, the more we suffer. True peace arises not from satisfying craving, but from releasing it. Modern metaphor, the virtual reality headset. Imagine putting on a VR headset. Inside it, you're a hero. Or a victim. You're rich, powerful, loved, or perhaps hunted and afraid. Now imagine walking down a real street, still wearing the headset. You think you're in a game. But the real world crashes into you. That's us. We're living in stories, projections, fears, fantasies. But we mistake them for truth. And what is meditation? It's removing the headset. Even for a few moments. It's sitting still and seeing. This breath is real. This thought is not truth. This emotion is passing. This self is fluid. A reflection from experience. There were years when I chased the next thing, the right job, the right body, the right relationship. I believed, when I finally get that, I'll be at peace. But every time I reached the peak, the mountain moved. And I began to wonder. Maybe it's not the mountain. Maybe it's the map I'm using. Then I discovered stillness, not dramatic, not mystical, just silence with the breath. In those moments, I didn't escape the world. I just saw it without filters. And what I saw wasn't frightening, it was freeing. There was no need to fix everything. No need to be someone else. Just awareness, pure and clear. Not a dream, but the awakening from one. Final thought. You don't have to abandon the world. You don't have to retreat into a cave. You simply have to wake up, to see through the illusions that bind you. When you do, you'll still walk the same streets. Still work, still love, still cry, still laugh. But everything will be different, because you'll no longer mistake the dream for reality. And that's what the Buddha offered us, not escape, but clarity. Not denial, but direct seeing. Not a new identity, but freedom from identity. So take a breath. Take off the headset. And for a moment, see things as they are, not as you wish or fear them to be. That's where liberation begins. 14. Enlightenment in the mud, the lotus paradox. Just like a lotus cannot bloom in clean water, but only in muddy ponds, enlightenment arises from delusion. Of all the symbols in Buddhism, perhaps none is more powerful than the lotus. It grows from mud, dark, messy, sticky. And yet, it rises. Petal by petal, it emerges unstained, untouched, radiant. The lotus doesn't wait for the pond to become clean. It blooms in the mess. Because that's where growth happens. The paradox we all live. We're taught to believe. I'll start meditating when I'm calmer. I'll be worthy once I heal my trauma. I'll seek awakening once I'm done being angry, addicted, or broken. But the lotus says otherwise. Anger? That's your training ground. Grief? That's your teacher. Addiction? That's your fire of transformation. You don't have to fix yourself first. You don't have to be pure before you begin. You begin now. Here. In the mud. Because awakening doesn't come in spite of your suffering. It comes through it. Story, the hidden diamond. There's an old parable. A poor man wandered his whole life with a priceless diamond sewn into his forehead, but he never knew. It sat there, hidden from his sight, giving him no benefit. One day, he fell and hit his head. The wound bled. And in that pain, someone noticed a glint beneath the skin. That diamond was there all along. But it took pain to reveal it. We are just like that. We search everywhere for healing, peace, purpose. When all along, the jewel was already within us. And often, it's the wound that finally shows us the way. My reflection. I used to think I had to clean up my inner world before I could call myself spiritual. I thought healing meant erasing the mess. But then I realized, the mess is the method. The storm is the stillness in disguise. The wound is the doorway. Some of my deepest growth didn't come when life was easy, but when I was cracked open. It was in heartbreak that I found compassion. In anxiety that I learned presence. In failure that I discovered humility. In darkness, I found light. Not by escaping, but by sitting with it, seeing it, softening into it. The true path. Buddhism never promised perfection. It promised awakening. And awakening doesn't happen away from life, it happens in the middle of it. In the dishes. In the arguments. In the sleepless nights. In the mistakes you thought disqualified you. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are exactly where awakening begins. Final thought. The mud is not a detour. It's the birthplace of the lotus. So instead of waiting for the water to clear, begin here. Now. With your full, messy, beautiful human self. Because you're not on the outside of enlightenment looking in. You're already holding the seed. And the mud? It's exactly what that seed needs to bloom. Your suffering is not the end of your story, it's the soil your soul grows from. 15. Final reflections, the practice of freedom. The path is not in the sky. The path is in the heart. The Buddha. So, what now? You've read the teachings. Reflected on the parables. Felt the resonance in your own heart. But the Buddha wasn't a philosopher spinning abstract ideas. He was a guide. And his teachings? Not decorations for the intellect, but tools. For freedom. For healing. For living. What does it mean to practice? You don't need to memorize Pali chants. You don't have to meditate for hours each day, unless you want to. You don't need a robe, a shrine, or a perfect life. You only need to begin again, moment by moment, with intention. Here's the essence of the path. Brain, be aware of your mind. Notice when you're reacting. Notice when you're clinging. Pause. Breathe. Witness. Red heart, act with compassion. To yourself. To others. even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Fire let go of what hurts. Not because you don't care, but because it's too heavy to carry any longer. Cherry blossom return to what heals. Your breath. Your values. Your stillness. Your joy. Your humanity. Enlightenment is not a mountaintop. We often imagine awakening as some far-off place. Like one day, after years of silence and fasting, we'll arrive at a perfect, untouchable state. But the Buddha said otherwise. Enlightenment is not escape. It's engagement. It's not a reward. It's a relationship with this moment, with this breath, with this being human. It's the courage to meet life fully. With wisdom when you can. With gentleness when you can't. With forgiveness when you forget. Because you will forget. You will fall. You will react, shut down, lose your way. But the magic isn't in never falling. It's in the return. The freedom to begin again. Every moment, you are given a new chance. A new breath. A new step. You don't need to go back to the beginning. You don't need to punish yourself. You simply return. To awareness. To kindness. To your Buddha nature. That is freedom. Not some final destination, but a living, breathing practice. Not perfection, but presence. Final word. You are not separate from the teachings. You are not behind on the path. You are not too broken, too busy, or too late. You are already walking the path. Every time you choose love over fear. Stillness over reactivity. Curiosity over judgment. So don't wait for enlightenment to arrive. Live it. Moment by moment. Step by step. Not to become perfect, but to become free. And if you fall tomorrow, that's okay. Breathe. Smile. Begin again. That's the whole practice. You don't walk the path to find freedom. You walk it because you're already free to choose love right now. Conclusion, the invitation of the path. The best teachings of the Buddha are not just about ending suffering. They are about rediscovering the joy of being truly alive. They ask us to stop sleepwalking. To stop numbing. To stop chasing shadows. And instead, to wake up. You are the sky. Everything else is just the weather. Pema Chodron. Let the teachings guide you. Let your suffering become your path. And know this, you already carry the light you seek.